everybody. This is Martin John, and we're here to talk about the Tao of the Day. The Tao Te Ching, which is the text behind the Tao of the Day, is an ancient text written about 600 BCE. And I'm being asked to back up a document here. And it is all about living a more reasonable life. What I mean by living a reasonable life is you don't ask other people to be something or do something in order to make you feel better. You don't ask things to change for you. You see what they do and you do what you need to do. You yield to their knowing what's best for them. Now, of course, we can get into raising kids and other things like that. And the Tao does when it says, governing other things. You govern your children, right? When you're raising your children, you're governing over them. And what it says is it's best to use restraint for yourself, not restraints on them. But it says use restraint. Step back. Allow yourself to yield to what the needs are for it. Of course, you got to keep your child safe and all of those things, but you don't have to be the influence over your children. The world is a place that may want to take advantage of your child, whether that's a lion or a marketing company, right? And so we do have to make sure that our child knows it's the wonderful thing, and that having things isn't necessarily going to be the way forward. Now, I don't know how to raise a child. I've never raised a child, but I do know that raising children does change one's perspective to life. However, as someone who was a child, and we all were, and as someone who talks about living under the influence, there is no way you are not going to influence your child. Your child is going to take on a frame of reference in its life, especially while it's a child, until it's an adult and has enough information that it can build a frame of reference on its own. And when it's taking on your frame of reference, if you're not healthy, then it's taking on an unhealthy frame of reference. My mom was unhealthy. She was 17 when she had me, and I was her second. She had responsibility issues. And the reason she had responsibility is because she had a mentally disabled sister. And every time her sister did something wrong, she got in trouble. So what ends up happening to her is that she becomes responsible for everything. And she's afraid of getting in trouble by not being responsible. And so when she raises her children and when she raises her grandchildren, which ultimately happened, I can see clearly how being beat as a child for your sisters, and really, what it ended up being was the shame that my mom's father had about having a mentally handicapped child. So my mom's perspective of the world was framed by that. Well, his perspective of the world, her father, was framed by something else. And he influenced her, which then influenced me. And then that influenced, me and my sister, let's say, and then that influenced my sister's kids, right? And so generations after generation of all of this, this building of frames of references from different perspectives, right? My mom and her dad didn't have the same perspective. Her dad was doing things to make his perspective better, and my mom was building a perspective from that. And then I was building a perspective from her protecting herself from getting in trouble and not being, because if she wasn't responsible, she would get in trouble. So there's no way that you're not going to influence your child. There's no way that you're not going to affect the frame of reference of your child. And every child has to have a frame of reference, but it's always going to change. We got to recognize that our frame of reference is going to change. And that's why we look to Tao and say, okay, well, how can I yield even more so that I don't have to influence those things around me? How can I allow those things to be as they are without them having to be what I want them to be? How can I let go of that? So that's sort of at the core of what the Tao really sort of addresses. It's how can we be in a better place to allow things to be as they are? And how can we then, without desire to want things to change, recognize that we're where we are? You know, we're all part of this together. We're all part of one big machine, right? Some of us are doing one thing and others are doing another, and it's our job to do that. Now, once we start to praise and uplift one position or one thing, you know, the Tao talks about that. The Tao talks about this idea of like, hey, if we over-esteem somebody, if we over-elevate owning a certain product or something, then we're taking people who are not in that position, who don't own that product, and we're pushing them to the outside. You know, and that's a thing we do. That's how we influence people. That's how, you know, and there's nothing to be gained there. Yeah, sure, you might get followers, but what are followers? They're just another metric of this is how my life is successful. But it's like, wait, can't you recognize that you're alive? That in and of itself is a success. All right, so in this room, what I ask is if anybody wants to step up and pick a number between 1 and 81, we'll read that verse of the Tao together. And we'll chat a little bit about what is going on in your life and how that might relate to how you might kind of shift your perspective a little bit on that thing, and just recognize what's going on in your life. I do this so I can gain perspective, and so other people can gain perspective as well. So if nobody wants to step up right now, I'm going to go ahead and pick a number. Let me just kind of close my eyes and take a breath. I'm going to just pick number 1 today, expressing Tao. Expressing Tao is for all the religious texts and all the things that we've read and written throughout time, this is probably the best way to start anything of that nature. You know, any sort of nonfiction writing. And I'm going to read it, and then we'll go through it line by line, and we'll see what it has here. But this is all about expressing Tao. That's the title. Words are particular. They cannot express Tao. To have a name is to be limited to manifestation. That which is nameless is the source of manifestation. Self-referential, those who name themselves. Want to express the depth of the mystery? Stop identifying. Want to express the shallowness of the manifestation? Differentiate. Either way, no one can tell. The difference is in your experience. You know, an interesting thing about these verses is they are poetic in some way. And so they want you to think about it. They want you to be inspired to think about it as well. And so when I went through this translation, it's important to keep it short. You know, to drag on and on. The more you add, the more you limit. And that's really what this is saying. Right? Words are particular. They cannot express doubt. We live in a time where language is probably taken for granted. We also take for granted the fact that we can read and that we're bringing in all of this information, and now we're going to be taking we're going to be taking for granted the fact that we have AI, and in a generation, who knows? People might not know anything, and everything will be written. I mean, not everybody, but huge swaths of people are going to just leave it up to AI or whatever. Why should I think? Why should I? It's not, I want the right answer. And AI's got the right answer because it has more information at its fingertips than I do. Words. The moment you put words to something, you start to diminish it. And I mean that because it's can you express all of the things that are happening within your body and within the universe when you experience something? Because when you experience something, it immediately gets bumped into the cosmic consciousness. And you have no idea about that. You don't know anything about that. And yet it's happening. How could you find a word to describe how that happens if you don't even know it's happening? I mean, maybe it's happening in your, in your logic mind, whatever. But there is no word, right? You have to process from Tao at the core of all things to your body, right? This physical manifestation of things, to your mind, right? The consciousness that's walking around inside of you, to your brain, the physical manifestation of all of that, to your awareness of your brain processing all of that. We have come up so many steps from the actual thing, right? The energetic frequency, the vibration, if you will, right? Of all that is happening at this moment. Words are particular. They cannot express Tao. Words are particular. They are a thing. They point to something. Bob is Bob. And I know Bob, and I have a certain experience of Bob. But my experience of Bob is bigger than Bob. And it is still not what Bob is. Words are particular. And when you go from one person to the next, the Bob I know and the Bob you know, even though they're the same person, are completely different people. Because I don't know the Bob you know. And now every word is like this. Every single word has that going on within it. And so when I have a sentence and I say that sentence to you, what you hear and what I say have very little to do with one another. Because every word is coming from a certain perspective within us, right? This is what we were talking about earlier when we were talking about frame of reference. I have a frame of reference for the word Bob, and you have a frame of reference for the word Bob. They can point to the same physical thing, but they have completely different meanings. So when I say Bob did this, that could be surprising for you and not surprising for me because we know different Bobs. I mean, yes, manifestationally it's the same Bob, but energetically, because of the perception that I'm carrying, I've built a different Bob than you. Words are particular. They cannot express Tao. To have a name is to be limited to manifestation. You can only be in manifestation. So even when we have a name, Martin, John, right, me, you, whatever your name is, you're limited to manifestation. There is more there. And it is, when we want to kind of get deep into all of the things, we can say, okay, well, I can meditate and I can be nothing, and yeah, okay, great. For that moment, you can be nothing, and you are now not only held by the manifestation. I mean, if you've taken ayahuasca or if you've taken other sorts of psychotropic or psychedelic drugs, like maybe you have experienced this like being of nothing, right? Like before words, like words had to come about. And in order for words to come about, we had to understand things first. It's not like we didn't understand them. It's I, this verse is really great to think about Anne Frank. Not Anne Frank. Da, 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 da. What's her name? The deaf, dumb, blind girl. I forget her name. And she's washing her hands, and she recognizes, oh, all of these things are particular. This is water. Now I understand things have names. Now I understand that. Now I understand what people are telling me, because without sight, without the ability to hear, without the ability to speak, I am at one with everything. Things are not particular. Everything just is, because I can't see it, I can't speak it, and I can't hear. And so without those senses, things are not particular. But then, as people are trying to get me to see the particular, Helen Keller, thank you. As things are trying to, that was Penny coming to the rescue for me. As everybody's trying to get Helen to understand things are particular, she doesn't have any reference to particularity. I don't know what it is. She doesn't have any reference to separate things, because things don't sound different, things don't look different, things don't speak differently. It's all like everybody is desperately trying to get her to recognize the manifestation. But in her life before that, she just did things like people are washing her hands. And while she's washing her hands, because this is an extreme difference, right? Like, and this is my guess, I don't know. I mean, I just know the story. She's feeling things. She's like, wait a minute. This isn't just like air. This is something else. Now I can differentiate. And when I sit down, that's a thing. I didn't realize it was a thing because I couldn't see it. Right? I couldn't and so all of a sudden, there's no particular. And now, there was no particular. And then all of a sudden, the world became particular things. And that's really interesting for us to read about, to hear about Helen Keller, right? Like having this, because we live in the manifestation so much more. We have our sight, we have our voice, we have our ears, we have our touch, we have it all. And we can, for Helen Keller, feeling something is like everything is feeling something, and everything is the same because it all has a feel to it. So that becomes really interesting for us because we take that for granted. But the thing is before that, she was closer to just Tao, just being. And it was in everybody else forcing her to want to be the way they were and to differentiate in the same way everybody else does. Because when you can differentiate, I can help you, right? And this is the story everybody tells. And yeah, maybe that's true. But maybe Helen Keller would be able to communicate, but it's more work for us then. It's more work for us out here in the world of manifestation to help her. So we want her to be able to help us help her. And it's a cycle. I'm not trying to say one is better than the other, but that's a story in which particularity, I don't know if that's a word and if I'm pronouncing it right, but exists, right? When things start to become particular. I mean, I don't remember a time in my life where I thought things were particular, where I didn't think things were particular. I knew my whole life. Like, as soon as I started having my own personal awareness, I started to make things particular. This is my blanket. This is food. This is this. This is that. Right? This is separating everything. But there was a time in mankind where I don't think that that was necessarily the case. There was a time maybe before words. I mean, before, and our language stretches way back, but that's relationship. And once you have relationship, I'm in relationship to things. Like, now you can be in relationship to everything in the same way. But once those relationships start to become particular, we have to start identifying deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. We identify one thing after another. Words are particular. They cannot express doubt. Penny is here, and I'm gonna bring her up.
Hey,
Hey, how are you?
yeah, interesting. It's all right. It's just I kind of flipped the coin on its head, as it were, because I'm going to try and describe, and we know words are difficult, but when I am experiencing Tao, as in my words, in a level of consciousness beyond that of the mind, my experience, and the only way I can describe it is an analogy, my experience is to be part of kind of like a soup of particles that are not described, not named, just you're just aware that they're there. And if I want to experience a quality, I hold an intention to experience that quality, and out of the soup of particles, those qualities become more defined and I'm more aware of them than anything else. And that's how I experienced Tao.
Okay, beautiful.
I just want to explore that because it was just like before there's an intention to experience something particular, everything is the same. It's all an experience. But then I have an intention to experience a particular quality within that wholeness. And then that kind of rises to the surface to be experienced. That makes sense?
Right. Yeah. There's all sorts of like. It's interesting when we start to explore the why or how of something or
Mm.
because of something. Like that is a big part of what I believe is our free will, right? That is like half of our free
Yeah.
will,
Yeah.
right? Our free will being, for me, how I understand it, our free will is the ability to um, surrender or resist. So it's on some,
Mm-hmm.
either we surrender or we resist. So that's one of our free wills. The other one is the ability to tell the story.
Uh-huh.
And that's it. That's the depth of our free will as I kind of understand it. And the whys, the becauses, the hows, that's all our
Mm.
ability to tell the story. Um, Tao exists well beyond that. There is no story. There is no why. There
No,
is no
no.
because. There is no,
Yeah.
and so when you say I'm inspired to have a certain experience, well,
Mm.
why? Where did that come from?
Oh, I was just playing.
Yeah. And I think that
I
that's
was just
the
like,
and I think
it
that
was just
that's
like,
the whole
yeah,
thing, right? Where it's like
yeah.
we're just always, because like Dr. Rao came on the other day, and it's interesting when we talk about Tao, because we're talking in words, we're talking in particulars.
Yeah.
And so, Dr. Rao came on once and was talking like recently, and was talking to me about, and he was able to articulate it really well. This idea that even if you're not, as we're talking about, aligned with Tao, quote unquote, you absolutely are aligned with Tao.
Yeah. It's that funny, what's the word when two things are the same at the same time?
It could be a paradox, maybe.
That's the word. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's the Tao is a paradox in
absolutely.
that, you're aligned and not at the same time.
Right.
You
Tao
are
is here
in, yeah.
regardless
Mm,
of our awareness of it.
yeah.
Yeah. And like you're saying, like, it is the, I make a, like, I want to experience this part of it. And it's just like,
Mm,
well, is that you? Like, and then we have to kind of, and that's where, this number one, words are particular. They cannot express Tao. There is
yeah.
no way we can, like, the more words we put to try to express it, the further we get from actually expressing it, because we just open more Pandora's boxes.
Yeah. And you get more of the I becomes conscious and the will behind the I becomes conscious. The more we change what actually is.
Right, right. We are now framing things within our ability to perceive.
Yeah. Almost
And
creating our perception.
that's right. We are further cementing the influences under which we're living. We're further cementing the perceptions under which we're living, right? We
Yeah.
like all of that. And that gets us further and further from being.
Yeah.
Because now it's all of this stuff, right? To have a name is to be limited to manifestation. And the more things that we embrace, that we name, kind of cements us further and further and further in the manifestation, in the separateness.
And in a sense, the more that we name ourselves, separates ourselves and makes ourselves individual.
Right, which is the next line, which is self-referential.
Ah,
Those who
right.
name themselves. So because we want to reference ourselves, because we're like, oh, look, this is particular, I want to be particular.
Mm.
Self-referential, I'm referencing myself. Those who name, I'm going to name all of these things. I'm going to ultimately name myself. And now I have an identity.
Yeah, because the mind has to reference itself in relation to other things to actually exist as a separate identity.
Right. The head brain wants logic.
Mm.
Right?
Yeah,
So the head brain, the way I talk about it, like the gut brain, that brain doesn't need to differentiate so much.
yeah, yeah,
The heart brain doesn't need to differentiate that much. However, the head brain, being logical, says, oh, this is particular, this is particular, this is particular, I am particular.
yeah. And
And
I
so we're
relate
not
from this
expressing Tao.
particular, yeah.
Right.
So I, as in how I reference myself, can now relate to something else that I'm referencing as something else. So you've got a relation going on,
Right.
and therefore you separate yourself from that other thing.
Right. Now you are separate from, right? Like, and you
Hmm.
further push separation
Yeah,
rather than being like, wait, I am that thing I'm having a relationship with. And that relationship is going to completely alter and change from moment to moment. We don't worry, like most of us that haven't struggled with addiction and stuff go, I can put this in my body and I'm going to be the same person. So I'm going to eat a healthy, balanced meal, and I'm going to be the same person after the meal that I was before the meal. Now, that's not true. Right? Like you are going to have a completely different, like, and we know this because people get hangry. And then
yeah.
after they've eaten, they're different people. They're literally different people. I mean, Snickers went to, did a whole ad campaign all about you are going to be a different person after you eat a Snicker bar. And Now, we know that's the case. And yet, within our relationships, we're like, I don't want this relationship to change. And yet, our bodies and the way we relate to our bodies are changing moment to moment to moment. If we meditate, if we eat something, if we do, like the relationship we have with our body are constantly changing. And yet
Yeah, it's constantly fluid.
we want all of our relationships to be stagnant and stay the same. And we're afraid of them changing. We're afraid of them, ebbing and flowing and doing all of these things because words are particular. And so I've defined this relationship in a specific framework. And when I say my name, well, my name doesn't change. Well, yeah, but you change. But you just don't necessarily aren't aware enough to recognize all of the things that, like as someone who's coming out of addiction, I know everything that I put in my body and how it can, to some degree, how it affects me.
Oh, I'm going to practice living in that fluid relation with things. That's going to be
That's
really
a big deal.
interesting.
That's a big
That's going to
deal
be really
because,
interesting.
yeah,
Yeah.
because it's a constant. All relationships are a constant. And we had relationships before we had words. And
It's
those
almost
things were never defined.
yeah. It's like coming to each relationship with whatever it is or whoever it is, as if it's the first time, every time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you don't define it or you redefine it. Your brain's going to redefine it. We can't help it in the moment.
Right.
But
And that can
I
be
can,
scary.
I can remember when I was working in care and there was a lady with very bad dementia, and she could only remember things for a couple of minutes.
One sec. I wanted to cut you off because you get dropped off. Come back up, and then you can finish that story, the woman with dementia story. And then I got Dr. Rao in line, and I'm sure he's got plenty to help us with.
Yeah, I'll finish this off quickly so you can chat to him.
Oh no, yeah.
Yeah, it was. So my job was to sit with this lady and talk to her to keep her engaged.
Mm-hmm.
But because she only remembered things for 2 minutes, I found myself repeating myself every other minute with the same story. And each time I did it, I had to make it as fresh as the first time.
Right.
And it was a really interesting exercise for me because it's kind of talking about the same thing. I might have defined my relationship with this lady in this conversation when I started it, but I couldn't define it. I
Right.
couldn't define it all the time. Very interesting. Oh, I'm going to go away with these thoughts and contemplate. Thank you, Martin John. You always bring up something of interest to contemplate.
Yeah.
I'll leave you to Dr. Rao.
All
You
right. Well,
take care,
thank
my
you.
lovely.
You're beautiful, and I appreciate your sharing with me.
Thank you. Take care now. Bye bye.
Take care. We'll bring up Dr. Rao. I'm still going to go back through this number one because we've only really gotten to the self-referential, those who name themselves line. But I want to hear what Dr. Rao has to say.
Hi, Martin.
How are you?
I am great. I want to share something I was sharing with my wife and my sister this morning. I think that touches what you're talking with Penny.
Mm-hmm.
There is something we heard from the childhood which we didn't understand was iha para. That means you want to look joy and happiness in the iha. Iha means here in this world, now, this life.
Yes.
That is the attitude of most of the people have that, right? But then there is a teaching about para. Para means beyond your mind, beyond your thoughts, beyond your body, there is Tao, there is
Yes.
Brahman. That is para. The problem is we don't let this go. See, we want to be in here, iha, and then para. But then the people who went and touched that, you take Chinese or Indians and all those people who developed that culture of thinking about something deeper, something touching beyond our lives and all that, they really established a center of stability, center of peace and happiness and all that. First realizing that center, then this iha is very easy.
Mm.
But if you want to bring that one to improve the conditions here, but without really establishing yourself in that para, this becomes tough.
Yeah.
Because most of the people are just confined with this. I only see what I see. This is what it is. I
Instant
want it.
gratification. Yeah.
That's
That's what
it.
pops into my mind. Yeah.
That's it. That's it. That's what is happening. But people don't really do that. Last night, there's something happened with a room. I go there because they play this, not play this, this musician is a friend of mine. He sings the classical music and I listen to him. But every time I go, they ask me so many questions. I say, I'm here to just to use the music, but they don't listen. Ask. Well, some of the time you cannot say anything. I don't pretend like I'm a teacher, but I share the wisdom. So there is a rampant corruption around India, right?
Yeah.
And the kids are getting really crushed because they don't have the opportunities. They can't really uh, have peace of mind or something like that. A lot of problems are there. So one kid was there. I'm saying kid is 27 or something. So it's kind of, young people just starting their life. They want to make money. They want to live, right? That's understandable. And they are so upset because what is this? Everywhere corruption, all these things are happening. That is happening in India, right? Then the division between the haves and have-nots is enormous.
Yeah.
One Indian makes 365 rupees per day, average Indian, right? If you take the entire population. The guy who has a lot of money, he makes 1600 crores. Crores means 100,000 is like a 1 lakh. 10 lakhs is 1 crore. And this guy,
Mm.
160 crores per day.
Jesus.
But the same thing is here.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
See the inequality. But the thing is, your inner happiness, inner contentment is not with that money.
Right.
See, what the ancient Indian cultures taught was live simply, even really avoid everything. Then what happens? You are going to be contented happiness in that para. You see, and then that culture was eroded by modern culture of more of iha, much more of iha, at the cost of para. What I'm saying is, go back. Look at the
Go back.
Go back. Look at the perspective. Look at that
Yeah.
culture that bred that para.
We've
And
taken,
because
is it hara?
para, P-A-R-A.
Para is what's the manifestation, the world.
No. Para is the
Para is the Tao.
Tao. Yeah, Tao
Yes.
and
The
but
other one is, how is it pronounced?
manifestation. Iha is
Manifestation.
here. What we see, or what is the world manifestation of. That's where we can now get attached to what is impermanent, which is our body and mind, but we lose what is permanent, which is always there, is the Tao.
Right.
Don't look at it as a thing that is going to help you, but more like a innate we are.
Yeah.
That is in us. That is in us. So getting in touch with that, what is inside of us, outside of us, is para. That is beyond your senses, beyond your mind. So
Yeah.
modern people make the mistake of trying to see them through the senses and the mind.
Right.
No, you got to intuitively feel it and put the mind and senses away.
Yeah.
Then you are living in the. See, I was telling them, I am a yogi because my individual consciousness is merged with they are not merged, but it is already there. You just realize that, and
Hmm.
you keep that realization all the time. You see, then
Yep.
how blessed we are.
Absolutely. And
So
that's and you know, like that's the thing. Like the outside world
yeah,
gives you all of this incentive, like quote unquote incent, all of this instant gratification and all of these other things to keep you.
but we treat it as clutter
Yeah.
and get away from the clutter in the silence
Right.
of our Brahman. And then once you say, see, the problem with many Americans who are pursuing the spiritual path is they can't let this go.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. Once they let go, they are in it. They don't have to become anything else.
Yeah. You know, it's so it's like once they let go just a little bit, they're like, "This is great. I'm gonna go ahead and make money off of this." It's
Exactly.
like,
No,
but
no,
no.
they-
You just
yeah,
keep it gone. Like it's
yeah.
not.
That
Stop
you
doing it.
know, the entire world is going that way. That's why I told them get into touch with this particular thing where you can see the impermanence of this and
Yeah,
also realize you are permanent as awareness
that's right.
and establish yourself in that awareness and you'll be fine. I
Yeah.
just delayed my room just because I wanted to share
Oh,
this.
I appreciate that.
Okay,
Yeah.
I will go now and I will
Yeah.
talk.
Go. Yeah. Everybody should go jump in Dr. Rao's room. He's gonna do some wonderful. Like,
Today I'm going to
this
talk
is
about
the yeah.
breathing as a tool for us to enhance our minds and all that.
Oh,
Okay.
breathing is huge. Big part of everything, every day
Yeah.
of my life. So
Yeah.
yeah, definitely.
Okay. Thanks, man.
Thank you. Okay, everybody. That you know, if you want to help breathe, if you want to help breathing, and breathing is such a big deal because when you breathe, you can take your mind off of other things. It could start a journey within. Julie, how are you, dear?
I'm good. I'm breathing.
You're breathing. That's good.
Yeah.
It's
It's always a
it,
bonus, you know.
it is, especially when we can be aware of it.
Yeah.
What is like? You hanging out with some dogs?
I'm hanging out with Kingsley.
Mm,
Kingsley is a Labradoodle.
a
Thank you.
labradoodle.
Yeah. He's 12 and he lives
Oh,
by the sea and he's sitting out here on a sunny day with me on a chair. I've just been sort of looking around the garden that is here and I've taken my picture, my first picture of harebells. Because
harebells.
harebells, yeah, they are. They look very much like bluebells, except for they're purple, and they have a kind of a star shape as they come out, more open than a bluebell does. So I've taken a picture of that this morning with my phone, and I heard the number one, and I do
Yes.
love the number one.
Oh well. I still need to finish going through number one. Jenny
That's
or Penny came in.
fantastic.
Penny came in and shared a little bit, and then Dr. Rao. Again, we're all really like it's all revolving around this number one. So I'm going to read it again,
Lovely.
and then we'll have a little conversation about it. Words are particular; they cannot express doubt. To have a name is to be limited to manifestation. That which is nameless is the source of manifestation. Self-referential; those who name themselves. Want to express the depth of the mystery? Stop identifying. Want to express the shallowness of the manifestation? Differentiate. Either way, no one can tell. The difference is in your experience.
I agree. The one thing I really love about number one, it always brings me back every time that I read it. I get something new from it, something new. So I've already labeled something new. But the feeling of that is unnameable
Right.
because it's an experience. It's a different experience from the first time that I heard the number one, the Tao.
Yeah.
So I enjoy that. I love the fact that to name something, it becomes something different. It
Yeah.
does. And when you name something, you want to control it. This is
Hmm.
how I feel. So if I suddenly named myself um, a coach,
Right. Yeah.
I'm limiting myself. If I
That's right.
name myself a guru, I'm limiting myself to
Yeah.
what it means to me to be a guru.
That's right.
Okay, so that's why Tao is unwordable.
Yes.
It is for me, I feel, if I had to choose a word that I could get as close to as possible, it would be a way of feeling and interacting with the is. It's
Yes.
a feeling that I gain from the is and I give to the is.
That's
So that,
beautiful.
yeah, that's me. That's where I'm at. I'm enjoying that, and I'm trying because obviously we all go around labeling things. We do it all the time.
Yeah.
Sometimes we look at things and go, "Why? Why is da 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 da?" And that's labeling something as well.
Hmm. Hmm.
So stop it. Just see it.
Just
Just
stop
feel
it.
it. Yes. So that number one is my favorite. It's the one that I come to whenever I feel um, something different. Whenever I feel something different, I come back to number one and I say, don't name it because it has no name.
You know, one thing that I think often can get overlooked in this is the thing that Dr. Rao talked about a while back with me when he said this idea of like, even if you're out there like, you know, very selfish or like living your life in a way that is, you know, very much attached to the manifestation, like I want to go get money and I don't care who I get in the way of, and I want to, you know, like I want to, like, you're not being quote unquote nice or doing all these things. That's Tao as well. That's
Yes,
Tao giving you an experience. And when it says like want to experience the depth of the mystery, stop identifying. That's it.
that's right.
If you
That's
want
what
to
I try.
experience the depth of the mystery, then stop identifying. Do you want to experience the shallowness of manifestation? Differentiate. Meaning name everything. Make sure that you're like just differentiating. This is good, this is bad, this is me, this is you, this is mine, this is yours, this is this, this is that. And do that. And you know what? Either way, no one can tell. The difference is in your experience. Now, you're going to experience things differently if you differentiate or if you stop identifying.
Yeah,
So, either way, it's Tao. However, it is going to be a different experience.
and here's what I like to say about that, Martin John. Often when I start to differentiate, I always think, oh, this is my path and my journey. That's their path and their journey.
Yeah,
Those are my tasks. Those are their tasks. And that's it. But the thing is, at the end of the day, it all is interconnected anyway.
right. And that's right. So, like, there is the experience of the manifestation, you're differentiating. And then there's the experience of the depth of the mystery when you stop
Mm,
identifying.
yeah.
You know, words cannot express Tao. That's
No,
how this starts. And so when you start to differentiate, this is my thing, this is your thing, this is my thing, this is your thing, and all of that. And maybe it starts with judgment and differentiation and stuff. And then it's like, oh, I can let go of that because I can let go of the definition.
yeah.
And this is just what I'm doing. This is just what's
Now,
happening.
this is just what I'm doing now. This
Right, at this moment.
second, yes. In a minute.
Because
Every second
every
do it.
all of that, you know, gets limited to manifestation. And the thing is that which is nameless That like, it's not, this is just what I'm experiencing. There's nothing to name here. That's the source of manifestation. When you start to recognize that, like, that's where you're building the next experience within manifestation for yourself.
Mm.
And again, that's not even your building. Again, I'm using words. And
It's
so
it's
I'm
just what it
limiting
is.
myself to the manifestation. However,
Yeah,
it is deeper than that. It is like, because you're not the one building it. You're not the one having this experience, right? Like you're just witnessing the experience being had.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. Yes.
And the thing is the difference is in your experience. And when Penny came on, we were talking about the idea of free will a little bit, and the idea that, you know, your free will, as I see it, is in two things: either to resist or surrender, and the ability to tell the story about your doing that, about
Mm.
your, like, this is my life and this is the story that but you don't know. You don't really have that knowledge. Like, you think you have that knowledge because you think your life is linear, and you think that because you're experiencing it within the manifestation this way.
Yeah, because
But
the word comfortable comes to
you're
mind.
right. It's just like, oh, this is how I'm experiencing it. This is what makes sense to me at the moment. And so
That's right.
I am
And that
going
gives
to fill
safety.
that in.
Yeah, yeah. Gives safety and comfort.
Right.
I think, I find as I live my kind of experience in what I'm doing at the moment, is I get a lot of people express fear and about living that kind of lifestyle, but they don't have to, obviously. I don't have to, obviously. But
Live what kind of
they
lifestyle?
express that, and then they also express uh, the fact that they may like it, but they don't want to. They need to be in control, Martin John.
Well, yeah. I'm going to tell you, if you live in a world that praises you and what you do well, why would you want to walk away from that? If
Uh,
you live in a world where you have money and you don't see a way for that to be taken away from you, and that money offers you freedom, and that money offers you, well, the sense of freedom, that money offers you, like, you don't have to be afraid. And trust me, if I didn't spend 20 years in recovery and like all of it, like, my life would probably be very different. The reason that my life has taken this path is because if I didn't take a
Hello.
path such as this, I might have been dead, well, the 12 times over by now,
Yeah,
right? Because
yeah.
I embraced, because I had to live under the influence of other people, and that did not work well with me.
Uh,
So, oh, you dropped off because my timer's wonky. Um, yeah. So if I wasn't pushed to the brink, I don't know that I would have taken this
mm,
path, like, freely.
uh,
Now, when I was a child, when I was a very little child, I knew things that people didn't know, and I had experienced things that people didn't experience, and like, I was, like, whatever,
odd,
like, I was off, like, compared
odd.
to other.
You're odd.
I was odd. Yeah, I was an odd bird, like,
Yeah,
I
me
was
too.
I remember, like, sitting in the dark without the TV on in the living room while I was home alone at like 6 or 7 years old, and my mom would come home and yell at me for not watching TV or turning the light on or anything.
But
That's
that was an
odd, right?
experience that you wanted. That was an experience that you wanted. That was it.
Right.
That was
But here I am, and that, the fact that I would do that, and then, I remember sitting in the dark, just kind of being in the room, and then hearing my mom come up the stairs because we lived on this third story apartment. I would run around the house and turn lights on because I'd be like, oh my God, I'm going to get in trouble because I'm sitting in the dark again. And it's like, there was a connection that I did not want to let go of to this quiet, to this stillness. And here I am still, like it was just a couple years ago that I went to a dark retreat, right? Spent 6 days in the dark, right? Like I'm still chasing darkness. I'm still chasing quiet. I'm still chasing stillness. I'm not chasing it. I mean, it's there, but it's like the world is trying to get me to not be still by giving me, YouTube and internet and all of the things, right?
Yeah.
Noom vibe, everything, right?
I agree with that as well. I think one of the things about choosing this kind of way of floating about that I'm doing at the minute is it gives me a lot of different experiences. It gives me insights into how other people live their lives. It's kind of quite interesting. And the way that I float from one to another, sometimes it's been, not in on the book, so to speak. I've had to kind of fit in between these sits in some ways and not worry. That's the main thing, 'cause that does nothing. And just float along from one experience to another, asking for nothing, expecting nothing, and just seeing what occurs. And there is a huge peace in that inside of me. And I like that.
Yeah.
That's kind of good. But people don't see that when I tell the stories. They don't
Right.
see it. They don't always see the darker bits. The bits where you're sitting in a van and it's really, really cold and it's pissing down rain. You can't even make a cup of tea, and
Right.
blowy and wet and horrible and everything's damp. They don't see that bit. But I enjoy that bit too. I like that experience too. And
Well,
that's,
and when we can
I
take
don't
that
name it. I don't name it.
when we can take that step back and say I have that experience too,
Mm.
rather than I like that experience too, because it's like once you label it like I like it,
Yes.
or it's just like, no, I'll have this experience.
Yeah.
This is the experience I'm having, and oh, here's an experience I'm having.
Yeah, that's
because
it. That's it.
because it's
Exactly.
really difficult to say I like that experience too, and I can hear it where it's just like, well, like is the thing that is the measuring stick,
Mm.
right?
And it's
And
not a like. It's not a like at all. That's just a stupid word that I use.
right, yeah,
But
and the thing is you have this experience too,
yes, that's a better word.
and you surrender to this experience,
Yeah.
and that's what's happening, right? And because it's very similar to, oh, it's warm and I have a nice warm shower and I got a warm bed and I got like down comforter and I got these things. It's just like all of this. Okay, I will surrender to this experience,
Yeah.
and I will not try and grasp at this experience. I will not try, like, look at where I am. How, and like answering the question how I got here, how can I continue. Penny was on, we were talking about relationships, and this relationship with this moment is not something that I need to grasp onto. This relationship with this moment is not something that needs to be anything other than what it is, and it doesn't have to come from having slept in the cold blowing rain last night. It's not in comparison.
I
It
just say,
is.
oh, look where I am now.
Yeah,
Oh,
look
look.
where I am now. Oh,
Oh,
would you look
look
at
at it.
this? Like, look, I can't even make a cup of tea. Huh? Look at that. And then,
That's
oh,
it.
look at this. I'm in this nice warm bed and with this dog at my feet. Like, oh, this is. And
This
again,
is
it's
all
not
right.
even like this is great. It's just like this is this.
Yeah, it is fun. I'm sorry, I have to say. That is exactly it. It
Right.
is fun. And the fun comes in being part of it all.
Yeah,
That's the
that's
fun
right.
bit. The fun bit
Right.
isn't the bed, it isn't the dog, it isn't the van, it isn't the travel, it isn't any of that. The fun is just being here.
Just being here. Right. It's all the same,
Yeah.
and you're just having this experience,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's just continuing to unfold. And
I know.
and how great for you to like once you start having an extreme experience, the other extreme is going to come about.
Oh,
Now,
yes.
the more you lean into the pain,
Mm.
the more it's going to be like the higher you're going to get so that you can fall even further. So
Yeah.
they can be like, oh, look, I love kind of diving into this pain. Okay, well, let's get you to a really nice height. Here's a dog and a bed and a warm shower and laundry and all of this stuff. And there it all goes. And
Yes,
it's gone.
that's it. He's got it. He's got it to a T. That is exactly it. That is exactly it. There you go. And it's gone.
And it's gone.
Fun, it's fun. So anyway, thank you, Martin John, for having me on. Thank you for reading number 1, which is my favourite of the
Oh,
DAOs.
I'm so
I know
glad.
you shouldn't say so, but I
Well,
really
whatever. It
love
is
that.
for now.
Yeah. Yeah, in this moment.
At this moment, number 1 is my favorite.
Yeah. Martin John's my favourite, but don't tell everyone else. Okay, I'm going now. Bye-bye.
Love you.
Love you.
Okay,
Bye.
I'm gonna read this through one more time, and we're gonna talk a little bit more about it. Words are particular; they cannot express Tao. That's what we've been talking about all day, right? Like every word is a particular thing; it is a separate thing, right? Couch does not mean kitchen, right? Like you're not gonna get those things confused, and yet they're still very particular between each individual. Like I lived without a couch for many years. So my experience of what couch might mean is different from other people. To have a name is to be limited to manifestation. That which is nameless is the source of manifestation. To have a name is to be limited to. So to have a name and to identify with it, like a squirrel in your neighborhood, although you can give it a name, squirrel, you, in your perception, is limiting that to being a squirrel. The squirrel is not limiting itself to the manifestation, to what you deem it to be and how you limit it within your experience and your perception. That which is nameless is the source of manifestation. And the more you can get into the source of manifestation, like it's not good or bad or whatever. It's just, it makes your life easier. You don't have to go through those highs and lows that we were talking about with, Julie's experience of like, oh, I'm sleeping in a van down by the river. Oh, I'm sleeping in this mansion with these dogs because I'm pet sitting and stuff like that. Like, whoop, I'm sitting like ups and downs, ups and downs, ups and downs. And not that needs to be that way. That could be experienced that way. It could just be experienced. Oh, I'm sleeping in the van tonight. No big deal. Oh, I'm sleeping in a house tonight. No big deal. I'm sleeping in a museum tonight. No big deal. Like, right. Like whatever it is you're doing, like here you are doing it. And who knows where it's going to take you. I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday who's selling her house and moving to New York State to go to grad school. And she's 50. She's just paid off her house a couple of years ago. And she was like wanting to grasp. As soon as she told me she was going to grad school, I was like, oh, that'd be great. You'd be able to sell your house and get all of this baggage off your back. And she was like, sell my house. No, I wouldn't sell my house. And now she's like, oh God, I can't wait to sell my house. And now as she's giving things away, now I've been talking about this, like she's my buddy, right? I've been talking about this with her for ages. And she's just like, people are afraid to die. Oh my God, I can just give this stuff away. And she was telling me this as if it was like new. And I'm looking at her like, Yeah, that's. I wrote the Tao Te Ching. I wrote a translation of the Tao Te Ching. Like, are you like? And she was the one who kind of did the painting of the cover and stuff. And so I was really just sort of like, are you saying this to me? Because like I don't understand how this conversation is going to move forward. Like, she was like super excited about the idea. She was like, people are afraid to die. I'm not afraid to die because I'm giving up all this stuff. This is the death of a part of me. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I was telling you. Like, and it was like, so she was just finally understanding because she was able to give away things and she was able to let go of her house, let go of it all. And I'm like, yeah, this is the death of that identity that you named yourself. This is self-referential. Those who name themselves. And when you name yourself, you're trapped in a limited manifestation. And that's what was happening with her. And now she's like, oh, I'm not afraid to die. I'm like, yeah, I'm lucky because I've had brushes with death. And so I know, sometimes when you live on borrowed time and when you see that, I mean, all time is borrowed, sure. But when you recognize that you're living on borrowed time, it's easier to embrace death than it is when you're not aware that you're living on borrowed time. Many of us are not aware that we're living, that are like, we feel like we have a right to be alive. I don't. So I get to, this is a big part of my experience, right? My experience, my perception of how I live. Do you want to experience the depth of the mystery? Stop identifying. Want to experience the shallowness of manifestation? Differentiate. That's what we were talking about with Julie. If you want to experience the depth of the mystery, stop identifying. And there is no difference between the depth of the mystery and the shallowness of manifestation. There is no difference there. Don't think there is. Don't start thinking that one is better than the other. Sure, shallowness might seem, oh, I don't want to be shallow. But trust me, if you are in the middle of a deep ocean treading water, you would like to come across a shallow. you would benefit from a shallow, so you could stop treading water for a moment. The thing is there is no, like, depth is great, shallowness is great, all of these things are great. Just have this experience, whatever it is. Sure, if you're going to be jumping off of a cliff, you want depth. But if you just want to put your feet in the water and sit somewhere, just kind of sit with your hips and like legs in the water, lay down and not drown and feel the water rush past you, like, shallowness is beautiful. I mean, I read that to someone who's just like, well, the shallowness of the manifestation is just, that's a bad thing. No, it's not a bad thing. To have a name is limited to manifestation. Yes, you're limited to manifestation, but manifestation has a bunch of great stuff about it. All these experiences with the body, sex, and, anger and frustration, arguments, fights, like, those things are really great. Those things are like, the body is getting really penned into this manifestation. And that can be awesome. Want to experience the depth of the mystery? Stop identifying. The depth of the mystery is great. The depth of the mystery is like openness and out there, and like, it's an amazing experience. Want to experience the shallowness of manifestation? And again, you can judge those things, but without the shallowness of the manifestation, we would not be here today in the place where we are, right? Like, the whole 80s, everything that had to do with the 80s and early 90s was shallowness of manifestation. And yeah, okay, a lot of murder, a lot of banking, a lot of cocaine, a lot of all these things that really kind of like are help you separate from source. But that was, I mean, if we look at the drug, sort of like what drugs were popular, we had marijuana and psychedelics, and then cocaine, and then crack, and things that were just, it went from the mystery to the manifestation, right? That's how it evolved. And as we opted to embrace the shallowness of manifestation. And that's okay. That's a beautiful thing. There's something great about that. Now, the balance is good too. So as this one ends, either way, no one can tell. The difference is in your experience. What is you're experiencing? Is all that you experience the shallowness of manifestation? Is all that you experience the mystery? Because if all that you experience is just one of those, well, then you're missing 50% of the experience. So this is for you, right? And yeah, words are great. We can communicate, but you don't have to take them so seriously, because they're not expressing Tao. They're just expressing the manifestation. Now, can you be in a space? Can you put yourself in a place where you can just let go and allow it to be as it is? All right. I'm going to start wrapping up. If anybody wants to pick a number, I will invite you up. Pick a number between 1 and 81. Here we talk about the Tao Te Ching. Today we read through 1. We had Dr. Rao and Penny and Julie all step up and talk with us about 1 and about the particulars, as well as the separateness and the connection and the mystery. Thank you so much for joining me for Tao of the Day. I'm Martin John. If you're interested in picking up a copy of my version of the Tao Te Ching, you can find it on my website, which you can find in the links for my profile here on Noom Vibe. Thank you so much for joining me, and until next time, keep recovering yourself.